Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm doing a bit of a different video here right now, and as you see, you're looking at my screen, and there's a couple things. So the president just addressed the nation, and regardless of your feelings and your thoughts on the president himself, let's talk more about what he said. I've got a story here from CNN, as you can see, pulled up, and it says U.S. gun violence historian charts and graphs, and really there's seven charts or graphs on this. So without reading all of this, you guys can go and of course visit this as well. Let's just get down to the graphs. Countries with the most guns per capita. The U.S. comes in at 88 guns per 100 people, and we lead the world in this. And as you can see, Yemen, Switzerland, which I find interesting, being a neutral country and all that stuff, that they would have the gun ownership that they do. But then you go down, you got Iraq, you got Uruguay, Sweden, Saudi Arabia, Serbia, Finland, etc. You've got some interesting countries on here. So, okay, we're the world leaders in gun ownership. No real surprise there. Demand for guns is on the rise. Record background checks in 2015, according to the FBI. Firearm background checks by month since 2012. So you can see here, and I'm not certain who put these in here, obviously whoever created the graph, but you've got July 2012, the Aurora shooting in Colorado at the movie theater, gun sales spike or background checks spike. December 2012, Sandy Hook, and then it tapers off. Not sure why it tapers off, but you can kind of see here, just from looking at this, at least for me, there's a dip kind of in the summer months, as you can see. So that tells me that people get a lot of firearms around the holiday season, and spring and fall, or end of winter and beginning of winter, however you want to look at it. Moving on, homicide rate has fallen in the last 50 years. So, look here, you've got 10.2. These are homicide rate per 1,000 people. So number of people killed per 1,000. You've got 10.2% people killed per 1,000 in 1980. You fast forward to 2014 is the most recent data. You got 4.5 people killed per 1,000. Some could argue that there's more people in the United States now than there were in 1980. They wouldn't be wrong. There's more people in the world now in 1980 than in 1980. So there's statistics can be made to lie no matter which side you're looking at. They can tell both sides of whatever story they want, but you can't deny the rate has gone down per 1,000 people. Handguns are the most used. This was something that I had read before and was aware of, but a lot of people, they say here, after many shootings, the focus immediately shifts toward restricting the use of AR-15s or other semi-automatic rifles, but statistics show that murders, handguns, look at this, kill 20 times more people than rifles. So to put a restriction on a semi-automatic rifle, which I love how they picture the AK-47 here instead of the AR-15, but whatever. 5,782 murders with handguns versus 285 with rifles. I don't understand what this unknown is at 2,079, but I found it interesting that there were more murders with shotguns than there were with rifles. Or it says murders. I wonder if they say homicides, which would include suicides, but handguns. So that tells you that it's about concealability, or at least it tells me it's about concealability, not necessarily, long guns or mass murders. And then gun violence kills far more Americans than terrorism. That's common knowledge. 406,000, almost 406,500 deaths by firearms in a 12-year span than terrorism, which says 2001. I'm not sure if this includes the 9/11 number. I would assume it does, being that it's at 3,000. But I'm also assuming that this is on American soil, because it says on U.S. soil over here, but it doesn't say so over here. So I'm assuming that's what that is. 7 in 10 active shootings are in schools and or businesses. So let's look at this chart, and before we flip over and talk about some of the president's statements specifically. But anyway, businesses, 45% of active shooter incidents occur in businesses. 24% schools, government properties, open spaces, residence, house worship. So what are we looking at here? Well, if you are a concealed carry holder, you know that you can't carry in most businesses where, let's say, you work, because your company has a policy against bringing firearms to the place of business. Schools, gun-free zone. Government property, gun-free zone. Healthcare facility, gun-free zone. House of worship, most states, gun-free zone. Really, you got open spaces and residences here. So you've got 9.4 and 4.4 respectively. So that equates to just about 14% of all active shooter incidences are outside of a place that is considered a gun-free zone. Now, not all businesses are gun-free areas, but if you work at the business, most likely you're not allowed to carry. But I mean, just look at that. That's probably the most interesting chart here. Most shooters take their own lives. Nothing real surprise there. So let's flip over now, and let's look at the statement here. So this is a statement from Paul Ryan, who is the House Speaker, immediately following the president's speech here this afternoon. And it's interesting because this was released while the president was still talking. He was kind of wrapping up his deal, but this was actually released during that time. So let's just take a look at this portion here specifically, and that is that from day one, the president has never respected the right to safe and legal gun ownership that our nation has valued since its founding. He knows full well that the law already says that people who make their living selling firearms must be licensed regardless of venue. Still, rather than focus on criminals and terrorists, he goes after the most law-abiding of citizens. His words and actions amount to a form of intimidation that undermines liberty. He goes on, and you can read it here while I talk, but I mean, truer words really have never been spoken, in my opinion. I think that this is a very true statement. If you think about the gun community, not gun owners, but the gun community, active members of the gun community and the gun culture, they are probably the most law-abiding citizens there are. And the reason for that is because there are so many background checks. Whenever you purchase a firearm, regardless of venue, a Form 4473 has to be filled out. It's a federal background check on you. That's what that other chart was that we looked at before. There, to say that, this loophole, yes, private citizen to private citizen sale on long guns in certain states does not require a federal background check. But any dealer, any salesman that sells anything, they are the ones that require a 4473. So that's buying a new firearm, or that's buying a used firearm from a dealer. So let's talk about some of the things that the president said during his speech. One of his quotes was talking about the young man from Tennessee who was protecting the lives of, the way the president put it, he was protecting the lives of 3 young girls during gunfire in Tennessee. He stated in that the child was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. The 15-year-old boy was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. He said that could have been your child. That could have been my children. I'm sorry, Mr. President, that absolutely could not have been your children. So to try to relate to the mass populace, I don't feel that is accurate. There's no way your children would be walking to a friend's house in the middle of the day, unsupervised, unguarded, and be able to be caught in a situation like that. I understand where he's coming from to say that, it could have been anybody's child, but then to say it could have been my children, I respectfully disagree with that statement. There are more firearms protecting his children than any other child in the nation. His arguments that he says that, these pro-gun enthusiasts were taken completely out of context, to say that the reason Congress hasn't passed stricter firearms legislation is because they're worried about being reelected. I would argue, sir, that, you're worried about your reelection before your second term, so some of the stuff that you did was with that in mind. And it's the same thing for the Democrats in Democratic politicians. They're worried about reelection as well. It's not just the Republican politicians. So, look, ultimately it comes down to this. If you don't like something in this country, regardless of your political views, you have the right to vote and you have the right for your voice to be heard. That First Amendment is protected in large part by the Second Amendment, as are all the rest. So to say that one amendment is more powerful than any other, I disagree with that. I think that they're all equal. So that was my quick little rant, if you will, on the president's speech this morning, this afternoon here. If you have comments, feel free to put those below. I mean, that's really what this is here for. This YouTube and the community and the way these are all done. It's really just an open discussion. So go ahead, put your comments below. I mean, again, I would like to think that from a democratic point of view, it's tough to argue with me. I like to think that I see both sides of an argument and can relate to both sides of an argument, but ultimately I come down on one side of things. And being a firearms enthusiast, I come down on the conservative side of things here. Should there be background checks? Yes, but there already are for firearms. And for the president to say that expanding this could prevent even just one more tragedy, I get it. It's ambitious. It's that type of thing where everybody wants to agree. I mean, yes, of course, nobody wants tragedies to happen in this country or any country. But how do we get there? Is it by restricting the constitutional foundation of this nation that we live in? I don't think that's the way to do things. And I feel that a lot of my firearms community brethren would feel the same. So ultimately, it comes down to this. Let's have an open discussion about this. If you don't like the way things are done, you have the right and the ability to vote, assuming you're not a felon. So get out there in November, do your democratic, not political party, but your democracy, your democratic obligation, and vote for the candidate you feel best will be able to lead this country based on your views. Simple as that. Thank you all very much for your time. I've used enough of it. I will talk to you all again very soon.